This is Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success Podcast.
I know you love me. Why don't you talk to me? I know you love me. Why don't you talk to me? Talk to me.
Yes, we are talking about communication and how to improve it today on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about communication because I know, as a marriage counselor, I would say, air quote, communication problems are one of the absolutely most common things that couples talk about as being their main source of frustration and conflict in their relationship. And I have also been hearing from a lot of you that is also going on in your relationship and that you'd like some advice for how to improve the relationship with your partner by improving communication. And so thank you for communicating with me. I have been listening, and I'm excited to go here with you today on the podcast. If this is your first time listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast, welcome. I'm so glad that you found this. This podcast is all about helping you have a happier, more fulfilling life, loving yourself, loving others, and doing good things in the world, helping you be your most actualized version of you. And everything we talk about on the podcast is all geared about helping you not just create the life you want, but really grow into the person that you want to become. So we are all on a mission of growth, myself included, and I'm just glad to share this time with you today. So I'm glad you found us. So a little about me. I am, again, Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I am, my background is as a marriage counselor. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am also trained as a psychologist, and I'm a board certified life coach. So I draw from all three of those different orientations and backgrounds to help you, help our clients here at Growing Self. I am the founder and clinical director of Growing Self Counseling and Coaching. We're based in Denver, Colorado, but we see people all around the world at this point through online video. If you would like to get in touch with us or learn more about our practice or access more podcasts or more written articles for even more information, you can do that on our website, growingself.com. While you're there, you might also consider dropping by to ask your own question for the podcast. I love making podcasts that offer real world help to people who are on, a mission to improve their lives. And so if there's something that has been on your mind lately that you would like to hear about, you can email us from the website. You can also go to the blog/podcast page of our website, and there you will find a nifty little widget that will allow you to record a message for me, ask a question, and I just might answer it on an upcoming episode of the podcast. So stop by, get in touch. You can also connect with me on Facebook if you'd like to do that. Facebook.com/Dr. Lisa Bobby. I think I dropped the Marie just for the sake of brevity. And lastly, if you're on our site or listening to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, it would mean the world to me and also to others if you would care to rate, subscribe, and especially leave a review, because that is the only way other people find this show. And each of these shows is like a little bottle I throw into the ocean that has hopefully helpful information that is actionable, that's evidence-based, that can help you make positive changes in your life, solve an actual problem, and for other people too. So if you hear this and you use stuff and it works for you, review the podcast or rate it, because that way it's like paying it forward. Somebody else will be more likely to be able to find it and get advice that they need to help move them forward too. So Thank you in advance for doing that, and thank you on behalf of others who will hopefully benefit from your generosity in doing that. So let's talk. Let's talk about communication and why it is so important in a relationship. So, as I mentioned, communication problems are what couples view as being like the problem in their relationship a lot of times. And truthfully, when communication is not working between two people, no other problems can really be addressed effectively. Like if two people cannot even talk all the way through a topic, it stops. People stop talking, and these issues, if it's, sex, money, parenting, whatever, go unresolved because people cannot talk all the way through it and find a solution. And so even though the problem might be something more functional, like how are we going to handle, your mother-in-law coming over to our house and rearranging our furniture when we're not home? Problems. But if you cannot solve the problems, if you can't talk about them. And so we are going to be talking about what breaks communication down, what gets in the way of good communication, and also some things that you can do to fix it and improve it. And so as I was preparing for this podcast, I was going through like all of these different things and thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much to communication. There is so much that I have to teach people about communication. And it occurred to me that if I put all of this in one podcast, it would probably be like, a 90-minute or longer podcast and everybody would fall asleep. So what I have actually decided to do, because communication is so big and so important, and I get so many questions about it, I am actually going to break this up into 3 separate, shorter podcasts. And so just to give you a heads up, if you're one of my regular listeners, I usually post a podcast once every 2 weeks on Monday, but for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be rolling these out every Monday so that you have access to them. I'm not going to keep you waiting, but they're going to be shorter podcasts, but with information that you can use immediately. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the number one most important idea / action / behavior that you can do to improve communication in your relationship. And it is the foundation of improving communication. So that's where we're going today. Next week, what I'm going to be talking about, the next 2 weeks, backing up just slightly, when communication gets hard in relationships, it usually breaks one of 2 ways. One person in a relationship typically gets more kind of elevated, more anxious, more screamy, more pursuing, kind of chasing their partner around, wanting them to talk to them. That's kind of option 1. And we need to talk about that, because what people experience is my partner is always angry. We can't talk about anything. It's a minefield. I'm walking on eggshells all the time. And so if you have a partner that is like getting kind of scary, I want to talk to you about how to handle that if you have a partner who is communicating in the angry kind of way. Now, that correlates. The other side of this is that people can also, when communication is problematic, start to withdraw from a relationship. They will be kind of avoidant. They stay in the garage. They don't talk. They don't offer a lot of information. They can even get kind of secretive about stuff, which frustrates the heck out of their partners. And so if this has been your experience in your relationship, that you're trying to communicate with somebody that's shutting down and like not talking to you or getting defensive and and kind of like shutting down conversations or like rushing to solutions, and you can't talk things all the way through. That is super, super frustrating. And I want to help you get your partner to open back up and start talking to you again. So those both are big topics. And so those are going to be podcasts 2 and 3 on the topic of communication. So hopefully you will find lots of really helpful information that can help you solve these communication problems in your relationship. That's my hope. Okay, but so for today, what I want to talk to you about, again, is like the big idea that will help you understand your relationship differently, help you feel more empowered and more in control of improving communication. Because I think without this idea, people can start to feel very, very helpless and powerless and like nasty, yucky communication cycles are just happening in their relationship, and that they can't do anything to fix it. Okay, so here is the big idea. I would bet $100 that from your perspective, you are a kind, reasonable person who just wants to love and be loved, and that you have nothing but good intentions in your relationship. You want only good things. You want to connect, you want to solve problems, you want to have a good relationship. And that from your perspective, the only time that you do behave badly, for lack of a better term, you start yelling, you're sulking, you're rolling your eyes, you're saying mean things or storming out or refusing to talk. The only time that you ever get that way and you stop being able to communicate well is when your partner does something frustrating or hurtful to you, that whatever they're doing, you are having an extremely negative reaction to because they are being horrible and ridiculous. Like, you can't help rolling your eyes at them or like slamming the door, is because they are being so frustrating or so difficult to talk to. Am I right about that? That is certainly how I feel when I have trouble talking to my husband. It's like, why can't you just whatever? And so here's the problem. This is the big idea, is that both of you feel that exact same way. You are both innocent victims of the other person's communication style, behaviors, the things they're doing. And if they could just be nice or use a different tone or be more agreeable or do what you want them to or not hassle you all the time, everything would be fine. But they won't. And this is always true in relationships, because I need to like get a little drum roll thing for my podcast to emphasize what I'm about to say, is that, here we go, all relationships are systems. Systems, meaning that everybody reacts to each other, and then we start reacting to each other's reactions. And it does not have a beginning, it doesn't have an end. But without understanding that people are reacting to you and we are reacting to them, it can be really hard to kind of stop what's happening and change it, because we feel so powerless. We are having an unavoidable, unconscious, automatic reaction to whatever our partner is doing or not doing that is upsetting us. So here's another big idea, that you can't change your partner. You can't say, do something differently and reasonably expect that they are going to change in the way that you want them to change, and then you will be able to easily and effortlessly have a better response to them because they're not doing the frustrating, hurtful thing anymore. So, and unfortunately, when many people start couples counseling, this is where they come in. They firmly believe with every fiber of their being that their communication problems and probably a good portion of their relationship problems they are experiencing are their partner's fault. And if only their partner could change and do something differently, usually become more like them, then things would be better. But again, both people believe that way very, very passionately. And as you can imagine, this can get very complicated in the marriage counseling room or in your living room for that matter, because what often happens is that when people do communicate, they are putting a lot of energy into presenting evidence of why they are right and the other person is wrong, and it turns into a fight. And it can be extremely frustrating and extremely unproductive for both people because a lot of energy goes into getting the other person to change, getting the other person to listen, getting the other person to communicate differently or respond differently. And again, it's really frustrating because that isn't the way that relationships work. It isn't the way that communication works. And that is not the seat of your power. What you do have control over and what will ultimately change, not just your communication, but your relationship, is when you kind of come fully into this idea that I cannot control other people. I can only control myself. And the reason why this is so powerful and why it works is because, going back to that idea, your relationship is a system. And so when you start putting different things into that system, you will influence the way that your partner responds to you. Pausing to let that sink in. You change your partner's reaction to you when you focus on how you are communicating or how you are behaving. And it's a simple idea. It's extremely powerful and very effective, and it's also hard to do in practice because it's very easy to have an automatic, emotional, often highly negative reaction. And so it takes a lot of personal power and self-awareness to be able to shift that in the moment. And I think that's why so many couples do benefit from couples counseling, is to really get that coaching around, okay, how do I change my automatic reactions in the moment? Because without it, it can be hard to change a system. But let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? Real world example. And so let's just say that I am wandering in to our house after, a day of work, and my husband is sitting with his face in his computer as he often is. And I kind of, bop along and say, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? And my husband's like, I'm doing something. Can't you stop? I don't know. Go. I can't talk about this right now. And I say, why are you yelling at me? I just asked you what we're having for dinner. What's the problem? And my husband says, I am doing something. You're always, I don't know. I'm really stressed out right now. I cannot deal with this. Just go. And I'm like, you can't talk to me that way. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So that is scenario number one. All right. And you can imagine how that would devolve. I'd probably stomp off and slam doors and cry. Think about how mean and horrible my husband is. And he would sit at his computer and fume. And all right. So that's just a hypothetical situation. And that kind of scenario, my friends, is very easy to do. From my perspective, I was just asking an innocent question. What do you want to do for dinner? I'm not doing anything wrong. And he was being mean and horrible and belligerent. And I had a negative reaction to that. And then I told him about that. And then, we're off to the races. And that kind of little micro moment, it happens in the blink of an eye. And we don't even realize that we're engaging in it until all of a sudden we're having this fight. We don't even know why we're fighting, and it just turns into this bad yuckiness, okay? And we've all been there, because that is the effortless option. Now, let's have a redo. If I were really embracing this idea that I'm sharing with you, that I have control over the way communication unfolds, and that my actions and my behaviors influence this system. And I know that by practicing things like unconditional love and compassion and kindness and generosity, and some of the things that we've already talked about on past episodes of this podcast, and really, being a loving, generous person who is able to think about the needs and rights of my husband as well as my own, okay? So you have to kind of be in that headspace. I come bopping into the house, again, minding my own business, like, hey, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? And my husband says, I can't talk about that right now. And goes into his thing, and he's, I don't know, just figure it out. I can't deal with this. And in that moment, I could choose to be like, you can't talk to me that way. Or I could go into that, you know what? I'm not going to slap that ball back at him. I am going to catch this ball. And I am going to be very intentional about the way I react to him in this moment. And I might pause, and I might breathe, and I might center myself. And then I might say something like, You sound stressed out. Is everything okay? And I'm not saying it in a crappy way. I'm not saying it in an accusatory way. I'm saying it in I'm concerned about you because you seem really genuinely stressed. Is everything okay? And what I have just added to our communication system in that moment was genuine compassion and an expression of caring, which my husband would then have a different response to. And he might say something like, yeah, I have been trying to figure out this thing for hours. It's killing me. I don't know how to get it to work. I am just so frustrated right now. And I have to get this done by tomorrow morning. I have a deadline, and I have a headache. Which would then allow me to say something like, okay, I didn't know that. I'm sorry about that. I can totally handle dinner. I will get you something. You can eat at your desk if you need to. Can I get you some Tylenol or something? What can I do to help? And he might say, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I'm being all snappy and weird. It's been a really hard day. And thank you. And he will feel loved and connected to me. I will feel compassionate towards him. We all have hard days, right? We all aren't perfect all the time. And that would actually be a bonding moment in our relationship. Or it could have been a fight. But it wasn't a fight because I was in control of how I responded to him, and I made a choice to put something different into that system. And again, it's not necessarily easy to do because what it requires is a lot of different things. I think first of all, it requires empathy and it requires compassion and an understanding that whenever anybody is behaving badly, it's on some level because they are experiencing hurt or fear or pain. Like in that imaginary example, my husband was in a state of fear and stress and frustration and probably, self-doubt. Like, why can't I figure this out? Like all these different things. But understanding that he's not out to get me. It wasn't personal. It's not like a personal attack. Like he's just not in a good space right in that moment. And as a fellow human being and traveler on this earth, he doesn't have to be okay all of the time because that is an unrealistic expectation for anybody. And so just again, to be generous and to be tolerant and accepting in that moment, as opposed to going to that place of defensiveness or lashing back out or getting my own anxieties triggered or why is he being so mean to me? Like that kind of thing. And again, so it's hard because it requires us to stay in that place of love and acceptance. But I think it's also hard because in order to communicate well and really kind of be in that place of empowerment where you are in control of how you are responding, it requires you to have developed a number of inner skills that do, I think, take intention and active learning to achieve over your life. Like, for example, emotional regulation skills so that you can experience a wave of fear or frustration or whatever it is and be able to kind of breathe, coach yourself through it, kind of come back down a couple of notches without automatically reacting from that emotion in a way that's going to be problematic in your relationship. And those emotional regulation skills aren't something that just happen. They're something that you have to do intentionally. Also, what I see in the counseling room and what has happened in my own life too, is that automatic thoughts and core beliefs about what is happening and what it means, and he shouldn't talk to me that way. And if he does talk to me, I have to defend myself. And, going into all of these automatic core beliefs and making assumptions about the way he feels about me or what it means in terms of our relationship, easy to go there too. And we all have automatic core beliefs, automatic thoughts that come up and influence the way we feel and therefore the way we behave. So for example, if he reacted to me that way and my automatic thought was, how dare he? I am not doing anything wrong. I am an innocent victim of his meanness. I would feel totally entitled to be mean right back and to, escalate and defend myself against his crappiness, but I have to stop that and instead intentionally shift into the kind of thinking that will help me feel calmer and have a better relationship, which is, wow, why, I don't understand why he's behaving this way, but I understand that he doesn't feel good right now, and I wonder what's going on with him. Kind of curiosity in a way it is much more helpful. What is going on with him, as opposed to, the automatic reaction and judgment about what he's doing. And so again, I'm talking about all this stuff like it's easy. It's not. Most people have to work on this stuff in order to get there, to be able to do it. So I don't want you to be judging yourself if you can't do it immediately. But it is a learnable skill. And this is why, people get confused sometimes. If they come to marriage counseling individually, why that could work. If marriage counseling would work, if my partner isn't there, how is that possible? And because this is where we can go into what is your power. Let's look at your responses, your emotional regulation skills, your underlying core beliefs, so that when you change your behavior, your relationship can change in response. And honestly, sometimes in relationships where things are pretty far gone and one person is refusing to come into marriage counseling because that's how bad it is, even if one person comes in and starts working on this stuff, their partner, I've had it happen more times than I can count, their partner starts feeling the difference and and then becomes more open to joining them in marriage counseling. So, but that's why, that's the system, is because we're still working on the system, but even just with one person. So I really hope that these big ideas, number one, your relationship is a system. Your partner is always reacting to you. And two, that by controlling what you can control, which is yourself and the way that you are behaving, you can then influence the way that your partner responds to you. Now, I will also tell you that, just again, to set your expectations here, that when systems have become pretty well entrenched, like that people have been interacting with each other in very kind of predictable ways for a long time, like many months or many years, like you always have the same reactions to each other, that at first, even when you try to put something different into the system, your partner will still react to you the way that he or she always has, because there's just like this well-worn groove of how you guys relate to each other. And it takes time to be able to like retrain your partner for what to expect from you. And so like sometimes people will say, well, I tried that and it didn't work. I'm like, well, yeah, you've been doing this with each other for 4 years, and then you tried it one time and you got the same reaction. Like that, you can expect that. So this is going to require your conscious, intentional effort over time to really show your partner that you are changing and that they can expect different things from you, and then they can respond to you differently, because they're going to have to change themselves too. So anyway, I want to also give you some tools if you want to start practicing this, just your own self. You might consider taking a look at any good like cognitive behavioral therapy workbook. Could work really well to help you just get that insight into your own thinking patterns, how to regulate your own emotions, to kind of identify what are my different choices in some of these moments, things that I can say in response, as opposed to behaving the same old way. So you can go to any Barnes and Noble and go to the therapy section, and there's like cognitive behavioral workbooks. We also have a cognitive behavioral online program that a lot of people really like. It's called the Happiness Class. It teaches you many of those same skills, emotional regulation, the cognitive strategies, but kind of like in an online class sort of format. So if you want to learn more about that, that's on our website, or also at the-happiness-class.com. Yeah, so go forth, experiment with that idea. And then I will be back next week, and let's start by talking about how to communicate specifically with a withdrawn partner, somebody who won't talk to you or shuts things down. And I'm going to give you some information just to help you understand what is going on in that dynamic, and some things that you can do, again, to influence the system and make it more likely that you will get more engagement from your partner and a better response for them. And then the time after, we'll be talking about how to handle the powder kegs. All right, that's it for today. Now, don't forget to leave your review if you like this show. And also, if you have your own questions for me, come to the website, growingself.com, or find me on Facebook to ask your question, and I just might answer it on an upcoming episode of the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast.
I know you